Hey guys, in this video, I'm not gonna share easy and normal questions like what is class and what is inheritance, etc. Instead, I'll be telling real and tricky interview question and answers for experienced people. Since I have taken more than 1,000 interviews and given 100 plus interviews, so I know what question an interviewer will ask you. And trust me, 99% questions from oops will come from this video. And you have to do nothing. You have to just like, subscribe, and watch this video till the end. Going forward, I'll be making videos on other topics as well. So now let's get started. What happens internally when you create an object using new? When we create an object using new, Java does several steps behind the scenes. First, memory is allocated. Java first creates space in memory for the new object. Second, default values are set. All variables of the object are given default values like 0 for numbers, false for boolean, and null for objects. Third, constructor is called. Then the constructor runs. It sets the values we pass and run any setup code. Fourth, reference is returned. Finally, the address of that object is returned and stored in our variable. So basically, in simple words, new means make space, set defaults, run constructor, give us the object. Can we create an object without using the new keyword? If yes, how? Yes, actually there are several methods like using clone, using reflection, using deserialization, and using factory methods. Can a class be declared without any variables or methods? Yes, a class can be declared without any variables or methods. Java actually still creates a dot class file. It still has a default constructor and we can create its object. When we need a class just to represent its type, so we create empty class like this, and this is also called as a marker class. What is the difference between object and object reference? First, object and object reference are not the same. Object is the real data stored in the heap and created using new keyword, whereas object reference is a variable that stores the address of the object stored in the stack memory and used to access the object. For example, if we have a student s is equal to new object, here s is the reference and it points to the actual object in the heap. Okay. Does assigning null to a reference delete the object? No, assigning null to a reference does not directly delete the object. Let's say again we have a student s is equal to new student. When we do s is equal to null, the reference is removed. The object is still there but unreachable. The object is not immediately destroyed. Actually, garbage collector will remove it later. Can a class have only static members? If yes, then is it still be object oriented? Yes, a class can have only static members, but conceptually object oriented is about objects having data plus behavior, and static methods belongs to the class, not to objects. So such a class is more procedural style than pure object oriented. Is encapsulation only about making variables private? No, encapsulation is not only about making variables private. Encapsulation means keeping data safe by making variables private and controlling how it is accessed by getters and setters. If a class has private fields but public setters, and is it truly encapsulated? It is actually partially encapsulated, but not always truly encapsulated. If setter methods is allowing any value, it means the data is not really protected. Private fields plus public setters is just basic encapsulation. True encapsulation needs validation and business rules in the setter methods. For example, if there is a field age and set age method, so we cannot set negative number in the age attribute, so we must have validation inside the setter method, and that's what a truly encapsulation. Why do we use getters, setters when we can make field public and setting getting directly? As we already discussed, encapsulation is hiding data by private method and how it is accessed by getters and setters. So we must hide fields by making them private. Okay. What are anonymous classes? An anonymous class is a class without a name. It is created and used at the same time, usually when we need a small piece of custom behavior only once. Instead of creating a separate class file, we write the class directly where we need it. For example, we want to handle a button click. Instead of making a new class like my button handler, we write the code right there. Hey guys, before moving ahead, I would like to share one important thing with you. Actually, we have a complete interview preparation material structured step by step by myself, expert, and MNC's interviewers. And the best part is that now no one need to go anywhere else to prepare interviews. There is a 99% chance that interviewers will ask questions from this material. You can check the reviews as well. So basically it contain a lot of material categorized by experience level, means each experience level has a different material with all possible interview question and answers. For Java, Spring Framework, Maven, Git, Spring Boot, Spring Security, Spring Data JPA, Kafka, microservices, Java coding questions, Stream API coding questions, and many more. I have provided the link to get this in the below description. And guys, if someone need this complete material plus two real enterprise client projects for reference plus one-on-one lifetime doubt sessions and referrals to the big MNCs, then they should check the interview preparation kit. I will provide the link for this as well in the description below. So now moving to our video. Can you tell me the difference between encapsulation and abstraction? Encapsulation means hiding data and controlling access to it. We wrap the data and code together in a class and decide who can access them. For example, a bank account hides its balance and only allows change through deposit or withdraw methods, whereas abstraction means hiding internal working and showing only what is needed. User knows what an object does, not how it does it. For example, when we use TV remote, we pass a button to change the channel. We don't know the internal electronics. Basically, in simple words, encapsulation is to protect the data, abstraction is to hide the complexity. What problem does abstraction solve that encapsulation does not? Encapsulation only protects data, but abstraction reduces complexity for the user. Abstraction allows the user to work with high level ideas instead of low level details. For example, in a car, encapsulation makes sure engine parts are hidden inside, but abstraction is about to use brake, steering, and accelerator without knowing how engine works. Why do we need abstract classes when we already have interfaces? Abstract classes and interfaces both support abstraction, but they are used for different needs. We should use abstract class when classes are closely related and share code. For example, if there is a vehicle class, car and bike are extending it. Car and bike can share the same methods in vehicle like accelerator. Okay. We should use interface when many unrelated classes need to follow the same rule. For example, we have a payment interface and every payment type has unique implementation like card payment, UPI payment, banking payment, etc. They may not share the code, okay, but after Java 8 default private and static methods were introduced, and two or more classes can reuse the default method, but still in interfaces we don't have constructor and instance variables. So in short, after Java 8, if we need constructor instance variables, so we must use abstract classes, otherwise interfaces. Okay. Can a class exist without any abstract methods? Yes, an abstract class can exist without any abstract methods. Without abstract method, it's like made only for inheritance. Okay. Why can an interface not have instance variables? Interfaces is a contract, not an object blueprint. Instance variables belongs to object. Interfaces does not create objects, so it cannot hold the object state. That's why all variables in interface are public, static, final by default. Why default, static, and private methods are introduced in interfaces after Java 8? First, let's talk about why default method. Let's say if we add a new method in interfaces before Java 8, all existing class would break. So that's why default method was introduced. Now we can have new methods as a default in interfaces without breaking existing functionality. Why static method? Static methods are just helper methods. They avoid creating extra utility classes. Why private methods? First thing is they were introduced in Java 9 and they are used to share common logic between default methods and avoid duplication. Why does Java support multiple inheritance using interfaces but not classes? Actually, Java does not allow multiple inheritance with classes because it can create confusion and errors. If two parent classes have the same method or variable name, the child class will not know which one to use. This is actually called the diamond problem. But Java allows multiple inheritance with interfaces because interfaces mainly define method names, not full method codes. So there is a less confusion. Even when two interfaces have the same method, the child class must write its own implementation. So Java clearly knows which code to use. In simple word, multiple classes means too much confusion. Multiple interfaces means safe because you must write the real code yourself. Can an interface exist without any methods? Yes, it's actually called a marker interface. A marker interface is an interface in Java that has no methods. It is used to mark a class with some special meaning. Real examples are serializable and clonable. what exactly makes an interface a functional interface. An interface becomes a functional interface when it has exactly one abstract method. This single method represents the main work that the interface is supposed to do, and because there is only one such method, it can be easily used with lambda expressions. If an interface has more than one abstract method, then it cannot be called a functional interface. Can a functional interface have default methods and static methods? Yes, a functional interface can have default methods and static methods. These methods do not count as abstract methods, so they do not affect the only one abstract method rule. Okay. Why is functional interface optional but recommended? The functional interface annotation is optional because the compiler can automatically detect whether an interface has only one abstract method, but it is recommended because it clearly tells other developers that this interface is meant to be used as a functional interface, and it also protects the code by giving a compile time error if someone accidentally adds another abstract method. Can a functional interface extend another interface? Yes, a functional interface can extend another interface, but only if total number of abstract methods after extending is still one. If extending another interface adds more abstract methods and the total becomes more than one, then it will no longer be the functional interface. Why can't private methods be overridden? Private methods actually belong only to the class in which they are written and are not visible to the child classes. Since overriding needs the child classes to see and change the parent's method behavior, a private method cannot be overridden because the child classes does not even know that method exists. Why can't static methods be overridden and only hidden? Static methods actually belongs to the class, not to the object. Overriding works with objects at runtime, but static methods are decided at compile time based on the reference type. So when a child class has a static methods with the same name, it actually does not override the parent's method, it only hides it. What is covariant return type and why it is allowed? Covariant return type means that the overridden method in the child class can return a more specific types than the parent's return type. For example, parents returns animal and child returns dog. This is actually allowed because the child's return type is still a kind of parent's return type, so it fits wherever the parent type is expected. Okay. Can we override our main method? No, we cannot override the main method because it is a static and static methods cannot be overridden. However, a child class can define its own main method with the same signature, but this is just a method hiding, not overriding. Why is overloading resolved at compile time but overriding at runtime? Overloading depends on the method signature and is decided by the compiler by looking at the reference type and the arguments passed. So it's resolved at compile time. Overriding depends on the actual object created at runtime, and Java decides which method to call based on the object type, so it is resolved at runtime. Can you overload a method by only changing the return type? No, we cannot overload a method by only changing the return type. The compiler uses methods, name, and parameter list to decide which method to call, not the return type. If only the return type is different, the compiler will get confused and give an error. Okay. Can you overload static methods? Yes, static methods can be overloaded as long as the parameter list is different. We can create multiple static methods with the same name in the same class. Overloading is about method signature, and static or non-static does not matter for overloading. Okay. Can you overload the main method? Yes, we can overload the main method by changing its parameter list, but the JVM will only call the exact method with the same signature. Public static void main asks to start the program. Other overloaded main methods will not be called automatically. Can you overload private methods? Yes, private methods can be overloaded with the same class by changing the parameter list. Overloading happens inside the same class and does not depend on inheritance, so access level does not matter. Can a constructor be overridden? No, constructor cannot be overridden because it is not inherited by child classes. Overriding works only for inherited methods, and since constructor belongs only to their own class, they cannot be overridden. Can abstract class have constructor? Yes, an abstract class can have the constructor even though we cannot create objects of an abstract class. Its constructor is called when a child class object is created to initialize the parent part of the object. Why doesn't Java allow the static constructors? Java does not allow the static constructors because static data is initialized using static blocks or static variables initialization. Constructors are meant to initialize objects and static members belongs to the class, not to the object, so static constructor does not fit the purpose. Can a constructor call another constructor using this and super method? Yes, a constructor can call another constructor in the same class using this, or a constructor of the parent class using super method, but it must be the first statement in the constructor, and you cannot use both this and super method in the same constructor. Why are constructors not inherited but accessible via super method? Constructors are not inherited because they are special methods meant only to create and initialize object of their own class. But a child class can call the parent's constructor using super method to make sure the parent part of the object is properly initialized. What happens if you make all constructor privates? If all constructors are private, no other classes can create objects of that class. This is used in pattern like singleton, where we want to control or completely prevent object creation from outside. What problem arise with too many constructors? Too many constructors make the class hard to understand and use. Developers may get confused about which constructor to call, and maintaining the code become difficult. It can also lead to duplicate logics in many constructors, which increases bugs and makes change risky. Can a class in another package access the protected members via object references? A subclass in another package can access protected member only through inheritance, not through a normal object reference. This means it can use the protected member directly inside itself, but it cannot access it using the object of the parent class created outside the subclass. Why are interface methods always public even if not specified? Interface methods are meant to be implemented by other classes, possibly in different packages. To make sure every implementing class can access them, Java makes all interfaces methods public by default. If they were not public, many classes would not be able to implement them properly. What happens if a class has no access modifiers in multimodal project? If a class has no access modifier, it has package private access, which means it is visible only inside its own package. In a multimodal project, other modules usually use different packages, so they cannot access that class at all. Why can a top level class not be private or protected? A top level class must be accessible to the outside world, at least within its package. If it were private or protected, no other class outside its own file or hierarchy could use it, which would make it useless. So Java allows only public or package private for top level classes. Can fields be public but still maintain encapsulation? In general, public fields break encapsulation because anyone can change them directly. However, if the fields are final and immutable, making it public can still be safe because its values cannot be changed after creation. What is this and super keyword? This keyword actually refers to the current object, the object that is calling the method or whose data is being used. It is mostly used to remove confusion between class variables and method variables with the same name. For example, if a class has a variable name and a method has a parameter called name, then this dot name means the object's variable and name alone means the parameter. So this means my current object. Whereas super keywords refers to the parent class object. It is used when a child class wants to use something from its parent class, like variables, method, or constructor. For example, if a child class has its own version of method, but you still want to use parent's version, you can call using super dot method name. So super means my parent class. What happens if you use this and super together in a constructor? In a constructor, this and super are used to call another constructors. This calls a constructor of the same class. Super calls a constructor of the parent class, but you cannot use both together in the same constructor. The rule is the first line of a constructor must be either this or super, not both. So if we write both, the program will give an error. Why? Because Java needs to know first which constructor change to start, our own class or the parent class, and it cannot start from the two places at the same time. In simple, we must choose one path, not two. Can this or super be used inside a static method? No, neither this nor super can be used inside a static method. A static method belongs to the class, not to any object. This and super both need an object. This means the current object, super means the parent part of the current object. Since static methods runs without any object, there is no current object, so there is no this and super. In simple word, no object, no this, no super. Okay. Can super access private members of a parent class? No, super cannot access private members of the parent class. Private members belongs only to the class where they are defined. Even child classes cannot directly use them. So if a parent class has a private variable or private method, the child class cannot access it using super or in any other way. In simple words, super can access parents public and protected members. Super cannot access parents private members. Can this and super be used together in the same method? And also give a scenario. Yes, this and super can be used together in the same method. This is used for the current class object, whereas super is used for the parent class part of the same object. Let's take an example. We have a class car and child class sport car. Car has a variable speed. Sports car has also its own variable speed. Inside a method of supercar, we want to use both. This dot speed means super car's sports car speed. Super dot speed means the car's speed. So in one method, we might compare them like checking how much faster the sport car is than the normal car. In simple word, this talks about me and the super talks about my parent, and we can use both in the same method. What is the difference between cohesion and coupling? Cohesion means how well the things inside one class or modules belong together. High cohesion means a class does one clear job and all its methods and variables are related to that job. For example, a class that only handles user login is highly cohesive. Low cohesion means a class does many unrelated things like login, payment, and printing all in one class. Whereas coupling means how much one class depends on another class. Low coupling is good. It means classes don't rely too much on each other, so changing one class won't easily break other. High coupling is actually bad. It means classes are tightly connected, so a small change in one class can cause problems in many classes. In simple word, cohesion means how focused a class is. Coupling means how dependent classes are on each other. Can a class have high cohesion but still be tightly coupled? Give a real example. Yes, a class can have high cohesion but still be tightly coupled. High cohesion means the class does one clear job. Tight coupling means it depends too much on the other classes. For example, think of a payment service class that only handles payment. All its methods are about payment, create payment, verify payment, refund payment. So it has a high cohesion. But if payment service directly uses concrete classes like bank API, SMS service, and database services inside the code, then it's tightly coupled. If bank API changes or we switch to another bank, we must change payment service. So even though the class is well focused, it is hard to change or reuse because it depends strongly on other specific classes. Okay. Is it possible to increase cohesion and coupling at the same time? Yes, it is possible to increase cohesion and coupling at the same time. When we split a big messy class into the smaller focus classes, we increase cohesion because each new classes does one clear job. But now these new classes need to talk to each other to finish the same work, so they depend on each other more. This means coupling can increase. For example, we break a big order system class into the order creator, order validator, and order saver. Each class is now more focused, mean more high cohesion, but these classes must call each other to complete an order, so their connections increases, which raise coupling. Okay. Can you tell me the difference between association, aggregation, and composition? Association means two objects are connected or know each other. They can work together, but none owns the other. For example, a doctor and a patient are associated. They interact, but both can live independently. Aggregation is a special type of association that means has a relationship but with independence. One object has another, but the part can still exist without the whole. For example, a school has teachers. If the school closes, teachers still exist. Composition is a strong form of aggregation actually. It means full ownership. The part cannot exist without the whole. If the whole is destroyed, the part is also destroyed. For example, a house has rooms. If the house is demolished, the rooms are also gone. Can aggregation exist without association? No, aggregation cannot exist without association. Aggregation is actually a special kind of association. First, two classes must be connected in some way. That basic connection is called association. When the connection clearly means has a and one object groups or contains other another, it becomes aggregation. So every aggregation is an association, but not every association is aggregation. Without a basic relationship, we cannot say one object has another. Okay. What design problem can occur if you use composition everywhere? If we use composition everywhere, a big problem is that our system becomes too tightly connected. In composition, the child object cannot live without the parent, so if we delete or change the parent, the child is also destroyed. When we use this rule everywhere, even where it doesn't fit real life, small changes in one class can break many other classes. Can you please give a real world example where aggregation is better choice than composition? A real world example where aggregation is better than composition is a teacher and a school. A school has teachers, but a teacher does not fully depends on one school to exist. If a class closes, the teacher does not disappear. They can move to another school and continue working. This shows aggregation because the teacher and school has a relationship, but they can exist independent. In composition, if the main object is destroyed, the part is also destroyed, but there does not happen, and hence aggregation is a better choice.